All right, today we're talking about the Netflix effect. How one tiny, struggling dot-com startup completely flipped the entire entertainment world on its head. And what it all means for how you and I watch, well, everything today. Okay, let's get into it.
Picture this. It's the year 2000. Netflix co-founders Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph are standing in a boardroom in Dallas. They're there to pitch a partnership to the CEO of Blockbuster, John Antioco. This is a huge make-or-break moment for their little company. And the guy on the other side of the table, the king of movie rentals, he can barely keep a straight face. So, what was so funny?
This was the number, $50 million. That's the price Netflix put on the table. They wanted Blockbuster to buy them out for $50 million, and in return, Netflix would become Blockbuster's online brand. To Blockbuster, this wasn't an offer, it was a joke.
To really get why this was so lopsided, you have to remember what the world looked like back in 2000. I mean, this was a David versus Goliath story if there ever was one.
Blockbuster was an absolute titan. They had thousands of stores all over the globe, huge revenues, and a name everybody knew. Netflix? They were just another dot-com startup that was burning through venture capital cash and basically just trying to stay alive during the tech bust. And the scene of the meeting itself tells you everything you need to know. Mark Randolph described Blockbuster's headquarters as this massive, gleaming tower in Dallas, with a conference table made of 30 feet of solid hardwood. The Netflix guys, they ran their whole company off an 8-foot folding table. Blockbuster was swimming in cash from its recent IPO. Netflix was just hoping they wouldn't go bankrupt next week. The power imbalance in that room was just staggering.
But here's the thing. Netflix had a secret weapon. They had a business model that was the complete opposite of Blockbuster's, and it was aimed right at the one thing that customers absolutely hated about renting movies. So let's just break down how different these two really were. Blockbuster's entire model depended on you going to a physical store. And, most importantly, it depended on late fees. You know, those annoying penalties, they made up about 10% of their total revenue. Netflix just threw that whole playbook out the window. They went with a subscription model. No late fees, ever. DVDs came right to your house, and they focused on a huge library of movies, not just the brand new blockbusters.
And this quote just says it all. Blockbuster's success was literally built on making its customers feel bad. It penalized them. Netflix saw that this huge customer frustration wasn't just a minor issue, it was the entire industry's Achilles heel. They figured out that a better, more respectful experience wasn't just a nice little feature, it was the whole point.
Their other stroke of genius was this idea called the long tail. So think about it. Blockbuster had to spend a fortune stocking dozens of copies of the newest big movie in every single store. Netflix, because it had a website and a central warehouse, could use its recommendation algorithm to get people interested in older or more obscure films. Those DVDs were way cheaper for them to get, and with a national inventory, they could serve niche tastes everywhere. It completely flipped the old model on its head. For Netflix, new releases were actually less than 30% of their rentals.
So fast forward to 2010. Netflix has won. The DVD war is over. Blockbuster is filing for bankruptcy. You'd think, story over. Right? But even as they were winning, Reed Hastings knew that the next big threat was already coming. It was time for another huge, crazy gamble, the move to streaming.
And this really was the billion-dollar question. I mean, their DVD by mail business was a phenomenon. It was profitable, it was growing, so why on earth would you intentionally sabotage your own successful business to chase some new, unproven technology?
What happened next has become a legendary business blunder. To kind of force everyone into a streaming future, Netflix suddenly announced a massive 60% price hike if you wanted to keep both DVDs and streaming. And then they announced the DVD service would be spun off into this new, terribly named company, Quickster. The public was furious, they felt totally disrespected, and Netflix lost 800,000 subscribers in just a few months.
And Wall Street's reaction? It was absolutely brutal. The company's stock price just fell off a cliff. It cratered, down nearly 80% in late 2011. The media was calling it a total disaster. It honestly looked like the company that had killed Blockbuster had just committed suicide.
But this quote from Reed Hastings, it explains everything. He really believed that the biggest threat to a company isn't moving too fast and making a painful mistake. It's moving too slowly and becoming obsolete. He was willing to burn the present to the ground to own the future, even if it meant ticking off customers and investors. They dished the whole Quickster plan, yeah, but that strategic move to streaming, that was set in stone.
So after surviving that self-inflicted wound, Netflix found itself facing a brand new existential threat. Sure, it was winning the streaming battle, but the war for what was on streaming was just starting to heat up.
The problem came down to simple math, and the math was getting impossible. The movie studios and TV networks suddenly realized Netflix wasn't a partner anymore. It was a competitor. And so the prices to license their stuff went through the roof. Get this. A key deal they had with Starz used to cost them about $30 million a year. When it was time to renew, Starz wanted almost $350 million. Renting content just wasn't going to work long-term. An analyst at the time just nailed it. Netflix was completely at the mercy of the people who owned the movies and shows. With companies like Disney and Warner Brothers already making plans to pull their content and start their own streaming services, Netflix really only had one move left. It had to control its own destiny.
And that solution was as radical as it was expensive. If you can't rent the best stuff anymore, well, you're just going to have to make it yourself. So in 2013, Netflix released House of Cards, its very first original series, and its identity changed forever.
And they didn't just dip a toe in the water here. They cannonballed into the deep end. By 2020, Netflix was spending over $17 billion a year on content. They became one of the biggest and busiest studios in all of Hollywood. And that brings us right up to today. Netflix basically created the world we live in now, where streaming is king. But that victory has kicked off a whole new debate for all of us.
Look, we've all had this debate, right? Streaming is unbelievably convenient. You push a button and you're watching. But you don't actually own any of it. A show you love can just disappear tomorrow. On the other hand, physical media, like a 4K Blu-ray, gives you a way better picture and sound quality, and more importantly, it's permanent. It's yours forever. And as all those different subscription costs start to pile up, a lot of people are starting to wonder if just buying your favorite movies is the smarter, maybe even cheaper way to go.
So, this is where we've ended up. Netflix knocked down the video store empire and built a massive streaming kingdom in its place. But now, in this endless battle for our eyeballs and our wallets, with giants like Disney, Amazon, and Apple all in the ring, the real question is, who's going to win the next war? That's it for this explainer. Thanks for watching.